Why are you still there? End of 2021 is near and probably the end of the world. I mean, just take a look around. Endless forest fires, melting icebergs, rising sea levels, and elimination of animal species. The only question is, are humans going to go extinct? Many species vanished before us. Why are we not also on the list to be a blip in ever-expanding radar of cosmos? And to that I say there's no way we're going to extinct when we have specific individuals to guide us, like this guy. Here it says an anti-vaxxer wanted a health certificate, so he wore a fake arm to his coronavirus vaccination. I kid you not, this is really sad. An Italian man raised eyebrows this week and made global headlines when he arrived at vaccination center in northern Italy and tried to fool health workers into administering a coronavirus vaccine into a prosthetic arm. I think the only way this can be more funny if this was not Italian guy, but actually American Italian guy, so we can have one more brilliant Scorsese movie.
What do you mean, man? It's fugazi. It's not fugazi. Just take a stab at it, honey. It's not fugazi.
But all kidding aside, every day, it seems, brings with its fresh new horrors. Mass murder, catastrophic climate change, fading of good mankind traits. It's enough to make reasonable people ask, for how long this can go on? But the answer to this question, I will need to take you on a very complex journey through time and our history. We will need to consult cutting-edge science and to look at the data. When that's not enough, we need to look at the vast body of classical literature, because this is Fabric of Life, a show where we try to fuse art and science to answer humanity's most difficult questions. My name is Vladislav Radak, I'm writer and mathematician, and today we discuss End of Humanity. Let me take you on an adventure.
Hello, Instagram.
Bad boy. I'm on a mission and I won't stop.
Well, I know the thing or two about End of the World. I even wrote a novel about it, researching for 7 years. In this novel, a nuclear annihilation and Third World War play a smaller part, but while the degradation of humanity comes from the fact that humanity didn't succeed in preserving books and libraries. Spoiler alert! It's why it's called Kniga, or the book. And I'm not the only one. Many writers over the last few centuries tackled this idea with various success. One preoccupation of literature, especially during 1960s, apart from wars and nuclear annihilation, was overpopulation. Stanford University biologist Paul Ehrlich's book, The Population Bomb, was published in 1968, a year when the rate of world population growth was more than 2%, the highest in recorded history. Half a century on, none of us is actually preparing our bunkers in fear of nuclear blast. Nobody's worried about that anymore. As for overpopulation, more than twice as many people live on Earth now than in 1968, and they do so, at least in theory, in greater comfort and affluence than anyone suspected. Although the population is still increasing, the rate of increase has halved since 1986. Current population predictions vary, but the general consensus is that it'll top out sometime mid-century and start to fall sharply. As soon as 2100, the global population size could be less than it's now. In most countries, including poor ones, the birth rate is now well below the death rate. In some countries, population will be half of its current state very soon. Now, people are worried about underpopulation. Henry Ernest Gee, a British evolutionary biologist, has a very precise overview of the whole evolutionary cycles of species. He states that mammal species tend to come and go rather rapidly, appearing, flourishing and disappearing in million years or so. The fossil record indicates that Homo sapiens has been around 315,000 years or so, but for the most of the time the species was so rare, in fact, that it came close to extinction, perhaps more than once. Shortly after Homo sapiens rose, harsh climate almost extinguished our species. New scientific findings suggest that small group of population actually survived thanks to the combination of great climate and resources on the coast of southern Africa. And there was planted the seed of humanity's doom. The current population has grown very rapidly from something much smaller. The result is that as species Homo sapiens is extraordinarily uniform. There is more genetic variation in few troops of wild chimpanzees than the entire human population. Lack of genetic variation is never good for species survival. I mean, this is exactly what chicks on Tinder are complaining about. There's simply not enough good genetical material out there. Just think about it. Beyonce took Giga, Lisa Bonet took Jason Momoa. I'm also taken. Who else is left out there? Speaking about what is left, over the past few decades, the quality of human sperm has declined massively, possibly leading to lower birth rates, for reasons nobody's really sure about. Pollution, byproduct of human degradation of the environment, is one possible factor. Another might be stress, which scientists suggest could be triggered by living in close proximity to other people for a long period. For most of human evolution, people rode light on the land, living in scattered bands. The habitat of living in cities practically on top of one another is very recent practice. Many young childless males are requesting vasectomies, stating they never saw themselves in role of a father and they don't want to bring kid to this world. The numbers are so alarming that many doctors refuse to perform operations on childless men aged 18 to 25. Some of them require counseling, yet one study finds that childless men who received a vasectomy are unlikely to change their minds in the future. Another reason for downturn in population growth is simply economic. Politicians strive for relentless economic growth, but this is not sustainable in a world where resources are finite. Homo sapiens already sequesters between 25 and 40% of net primary productivity, that is, organic matter that plants create out of thin air, water and sunshine. As well as being bad news for millions of other species on our planet that rely on this matter, such appropriation might be having disastrous effect on human economic prospects. People nowadays have to work harder and longer to maintain the standards of living enjoyed by their parents, if such standards are even obtainable. Chances are, looking at statistics of my channel, that you are in your 30s, in desperation to find a mating partner. Hi there, girl. Living in a big city, having a fancy job, looking for a male who has enough sperm count to make a baby with, not having enough money to support your life, let alone life of one extra child. Well, babe, welcome to the end of humanity. May take your coat. The most sinister threat to humankind is something called extinction debt. There comes a time in progress of any species, even ones that seem to be thriving, when extinction will be inevitable, no matter what they might do to avert it. The cause of extinction is usually a delayed reaction to habitat loss. The species most at risk are those that dominate particular habitat patches at the expense of others who tend to migrate elsewhere and are therefore spread more thinly. Humans occupy more or less the whole planet, and with our sequestration of a large wedge of the productivity of this planet-wide habitat patch, we are dominant within it. The signs are already there for those willing to see them. When the habitat becomes degraded such that there are fewer resources to go around, when fertility starts to decline, when the birth rate sinks below the death rate, and when genetic resources are limited, the only way to go is down. The question is, how fast? And unfortunately, the modern science cannot answer that question, and this is why I'm always telling we need to turn to classical literature to find answers. And of course, there's nothing better than old man Dostoevsky and his The Brothers Karamazov. Here, He says, "The misery of human existence lies in not staying alive, but finding something to live for." Hey, Vladis Vradek again here. Thanks for sticking until the very end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't see my documentary about Leonardo da Vinci that we shot in Italy, please go and check it out now. I'm going to link it down below. See you next week for the next episode. Until next time, stay tuned and curious, and don't forget, libraries still exist.